Welcome to the Body, Soul, and Spirit podcast this week. I am really excited to get on this journey with everybody and all the listeners regarding changing our relationship with fears, changing our relationship with rejection, changing our relationship with even the fear of failure, changing our relationship with some of these things that went against our worth in the past. And I think it's really one of the greatest tools that we can develop to restore a strong sense of identity, a strong sense of belief in oneself, and to really lead you on the path of understanding your worth. If you start to reassign a different meaning to, let's say, rejection, or a different meaning to the word fear, then our thoughts, our beliefs towards fear, towards rejection, they tend to change. This is obviously something that we have to contend for. This is obviously something that we have to be mindful of on a daily basis. When you think about rejection or you think about fear, oftentimes we associate it, right, with something that has happened to us. Let's say a past or a previous situation that brought forth these feelings of rejection, this sense of I'm not wanted, which leads a person really to feel not very worthy. We've been talking about worth, and worth is foundational, and it's key to everything in our lives because it is from that place that we show up. It's from that place that we understand who we are. We understand our value and our importance in this world. And it's important for us to start to journey that. How do I get to the place where I understand my worth? Obviously, we talked about in our previous podcast that we need to have a good understanding of what God did in our lives and what He has done for us to be able to understand that worth. Because once we establish that spiritual aspect of our lives, which we understand that Jesus, right? He came to give us worth. When you have that concept, it's foundational. It allows us to see better. It allows us to see that our lives do matter and our lives do count, regardless of rejections in the past. When you start to reframe rejection, right? Let's say, for instance, when you think of people that have done great things in the past, think about the Wright brothers, right? Think about people that have done it. They were like the first ones to do it. They were people who were brave. They were people who were willing to risk things. I mean, how many times were they told no? How many times were they not encouraged or applauded? Or how many times do we hear stories of people that have been that have gone and launched something for the very first time, but they were rejected. The door closed. They were told no, but they were brave nonetheless because they kept pursuing. They kept knocking. They kept pressing forward. And so these people, when you look at these success stories, a lot of times when you study it, it wasn't that they never had a no or a rejection that came to their door. On the contrary, they faced much rejection because they kept trying. And I think when we reframe rejection and understand that a no or a rejection, or when somebody doesn't really care for us or treats us wrongly, that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not worthy. But how many times have we attached rejection to our worth? How many times have we attached fear to our worth? And that's the mistake that we make, because we're attaching things to our worth when in reality it's false. It's a lie. I think about these wonderful people that have succeeded and done things for the very first time. They just happen to be brave. What if you reframed rejection And let's say you decided to raise your hand and step out or say something or get out of the boat or try something that maybe no family member has ever tried. What if you finally, right, make that phone call, or you finally step out and say, I'm going to try, regardless of rejection, regardless of a door closing to you. Oftentimes people shrink back after a failure. Oftentimes people just say, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to try again because it didn't go so well the first time. But what if you reframed it and said, I'm just a brave one that is going to try? Think about the things that are challenging for you. The things that are challenging for me might be different than the things that are challenging for you. Whatever that means for you, that challenge, that thing that makes you perspire in the hands and you just kind of second guess, or you maybe sometimes draw back because you're afraid to try. I think of Peter in the Bible where he looks at Jesus and he says, if that's you, bid me to come. And Jesus doesn't go and grab him by the hand. He just says, well, come. And he just happened to be one of the brave ones. There were other disciples in the boat, but none of them are mentioned because nobody was brave enough to step out of the boat and try. Yes, we look at Peter and we, oftentimes look at it from a negative standpoint. We say, oh, well, he doubted, but at least he stepped out. At least he got to taste it. And when you start to reframe a lot of the rejection that has happened in your life, you understand that rejection has nothing to do with your worth. So we have to be deliberate. We have to be people that deliberately reframe rejection. Whenever you feel rejected, whenever you maybe said something and somebody maybe shot you down or shot your idea down, that doesn't speak anything about your worth. Maybe you could say things like, well, at least I tried, or at least I'm one of the brave ones. I want to just challenge you, all my listeners, that if there's things in your life, dreams in your heart that maybe have been there for a long time, but you're almost afraid. You're afraid maybe to voice it or do it or step out in it. Oftentimes it's because we're attaching that label, fear, that label, rejection, to our worth. But if there's a dream inside of you, if there's something that God has placed inside of your heart, I want to challenge you to start to reframe things. What if it wasn't rejection? What if there was something else behind that rejection? Although it feels like rejection for you, but what if you reframed it and said, I'm a brave one. I'm not rejected. I'm actually valuable, but maybe God hid my value from them. As you start to make these different definitions to some of this fear and some of this rejection, then it allows us to step out again, to try again. That's very important, because if we don't do that, then we're going to live our lives hiding. We start to hide who we truly are. We start to not live authentically. Authenticity is key. When a person feels that they can be true to themselves, the authentic person is true to themselves. That authentic person is comfortable in their own skin. They're vulnerable. They're not afraid to look silly or admit their mistakes. They are not afraid. They're satisfied. They're authentic. They don't alienate themselves from other people. They can bond. They can generate closeness. They stop hiding. They raise their hands. They show up as every part of who they are. And this requires us sometimes to unlearn some things that we've learned, right? And to really identify some of these lies that kept us hidden, because we've attached rejection to worth. We've attached fear to worth, but we're really only hurting ourselves. And as you start to reframe things in your life, then You go from being invisible to visible, where you start to unlearn lies. You stop people pleasing. You stop hiding. You stop being numb. There's people who become numb, or you stop perhaps being disconnected. Maybe you're a disconnected person from other people. You're disconnected from relationships. You're just solo. You're isolated. You just run solo. But when you start to reframe a lot of this rejection that maybe you've carried from the past, or fear of rejection, or even fear in itself, then you're no longer carrying these lies. You start to unlearn some things. You now start to please God. You start to become true to yourself. You're no longer hiding. You understand your worth. You're no longer numbing things. You're no longer numbing and pretending like you're fine when in reality you're not fine. Or you're no longer disconnected from other people. See, God believes in you. It's important for us to understand that, because you are worthy. You have to feel worthy of being who you truly are. Otherwise, no matter how you show up, right? How fancy you show up, what a great outfit you have, or how good you look on the outside, you're always going to feel disconnected. You're going to feel a disconnection until we start to learn how to reframe some of these words. Think about some of the things that you have associated with when it comes to your worth. Think about all these maybe words that you've attached to your worthiness. If perhaps it's failure, so you stop trying and you never do it again because, the last time I tried it, I was shut down. Or the last time I knocked on that door, I was told no. Or the last time I raised my hand, all eyes were on me and I felt like a fool. And think of how many times you stopped trying, all because you attached a label, a word, like failure, like fear, like rejection, to your worthiness. See, you're not your successes and you're not your failures. You are how big you love. You are how you're loved. You are loved. And when we fear that we are not enough, we shrink in size. Whenever you start to fear that you are not worthy or that you are not enough, your size shrinks. When you self-doubt, and when that comes in, we start to people please and we start to betray our own selves. When self-doubt comes, we are tempted to dim our own lights. But deep down in our soul, we know that we were made for more. We know that we were made for a purpose. We know that on the inside, we were born with greatness. But the only way we're going to be able to just move away all these labels and move them away from our worthiness is to start to reframe rejection. Start to reframe some of these fears that we've attached to worthiness. Did you know there is greatness on the inside of you? You have greatness on the inside of you. And part of the journey is to believe that you have greatness inside of you. Part of that journey is for you to unlock and unleash that sense of greatness. And until you know that you are worthy, you're never going to unlock the greatness. Until you know that you are worthy, you're never going to be able to unlock and unleash this greatness that God has put inside of you. Many reasons why we don't believe that there is greatness in us. There's a lot of reasons. Oftentimes it's because we feel this disqualification because of previous failures or because of rejections that have surrounded us. But you're never too old or too young. There is nothing that has happened to you in your past that disqualifies you from worthiness. Worthiness has nothing to do with your past. It's never too late. It's never too early. No matter what has happened to you in your past, It does not disqualify you from the greatness that God has put inside of you. It doesn't disqualify you no matter what you've been through, no matter who has said what they have said, no matter what words were spoken over you. That does not disqualify you from worthiness. No matter how many rejections or doors were closed, no matter how many people walked away from you, how many job interviews you went to and you were told no, that does not disqualify you from worthiness. And so oftentimes we let past mistakes and labels, we let past failures, we let setbacks keep us stuck. They paralyze us and we're stuck in that fear. See, where you come from doesn't determine where you're going. Your past can only hold you back if you live there. Your past can only hold you back if you continue to live there. You were created with greatness inside of you. You were created with worthiness. And until you begin to believe it, you will not be able to unlock that greatness until you start to believe that you are worthy. What labels have you attached to worthiness? Think about the fears that lie within you. What have you not tried anymore? What did you say? I'm not going to raise my hand. I'm not going to give my opinion. I'd rather be quiet. I'd rather not try. I'd rather not call. Because behind that, you are afraid of rejection. See, that's what's keeping you from unlocking your greatness. That is what's keeping you from being one of the brave ones. But if you can reframe rejection and say, I'll be one of the brave ones. And so if you get shot down again, if the door closes again, well, then try again and try again. Because remember, no matter what door closes, no matter what anybody says, that does not determine your worthiness. Reframe rejection. Reframe fear this week. Begin to say things like, I'm going to be brave and continue to be brave. That's only going to unlock greatness inside of you. I want to challenge you this entire week to start to identify areas in your life where you just stop trying, where you would hesitate, where you would rather not do it, rather not step out for fear of rejection, for fear of what others are going to think. But instead, I want you to look at rejection in the face and look at fear in the face and say this: I will be brave, because rejection, you will no longer be a label when it comes to my worthiness. Fear, you are no longer going to attach yourself to my worthiness, because no matter what I do, that does not determine my worthiness.